Billy Luna.
Part 4.
El Chapo was just a figurehead. He was not the boss of the Sinaloa cartel. And what people need to realize is the boss of the Sinaloa cartel is El Mayo Zambada. He's this old guy. He lives in the mountains of, Sinaloa, and he sits on a bunch of money, and he's never been arrested in his entire career.
The Mafia is a shadow of their former self, right? I mean, there's so many bigger, more powerful groups. When you talk about the international conspiracy, the biggest, toughest gang associated with that is probably the CIA, right? I mean, that's the gang you don't want to work with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at the trade in America, I've heard a lot of recent talk that whoever wins the next presidency, they're going to stamp out cartels.
Please subscribe to the Billy Luna channel and like the video. Thank you.
And it's and it's fascinating and funny to me because I don't think people realize the government is in on that, right? So the government makes money off of the trade, right? So for instance, the Sinaloa cartel is the biggest cartel on the planet, right? They gross billions of dollars a year selling every drug known to mankind. I mean, they pretty much manufactured and all. They were the first people to produce it. If you look back in the mid 2010s, fentanyl first came on the market as a narcotic, a really dangerous narcotic, because of them. And when you look at the Sinaloa cartel, they've used a lot of scapegoats over the years. And what we've heard is El Chapo, he's this big drug dealer. He's the biggest of the big. A lot of people don't realize El Chapo was just a figurehead. He was not the boss of the Sinaloa cartel. And what people need to realize is the boss of the Sinaloa cartel is El Mayo Zambada. He's this old guy. He lives in the mountains of, Sinaloa, and he sits on a bunch of money, and he's never been arrested in his entire career. And if you look into his familial connections, his wife, her brother was a CIA asset for years in Cuba. Mm-hmm. He then moves up to California, starts selling marijuana to Mexicans, meets El Mayo's sister, marries her. Do you think it's any secret that El Mayo, for whatever reason, has never been arrested? He's a CIA target. Everybody knows that. And remember, when you look at how drugs are produced, right? So let's just say cocaine, for instance. Cocaine is systematically only grown in Colombia. They have the plant, they have the conditions. That's where it's coming from, or Ecuador, or those countries. It then goes like a trampoline. It bounces from there to Mexico. The Mexicans get it, they wholesale it and connect it to, let's say, a gang in Chicago. They then cut it with 1,000 different things. And by the time it gets to the street user, it's not even cocaine. It's a bunch of shit, really.
Probably more amphetamine.
Right. And if you look at anything, any narcotic for the most part, if you actually just take the drug itself in a, let's just say, hospital-like atmosphere without all the shit in it, like cocaine at one point was used to help you with pain, right? Mm-hmm. Morphine, it's all used for pain management. If it's administered correctly, is great for anxiety and depression. But it's all the shit that they put into these drugs, and by not regulating it, it becomes really bad and really toxic. And, it's down to the street user that buys this shit. And it's the cops in these cities that arrest people. Where do you think all the arrests come from? The drug trade, which leads to money. We put all those people in prison, and then guess what? On top of it, we then, privatize prisons, which creates even more money. They're never going to stamp it out. And even if they wanted to, you'd have to get the Mexican government on board, and they're never going to get on board. First of all, as well, let me ask you a question. Do you think the government has any idea where to go to find El Mencho or El Mayo? Of course not. They're the most elusive people on the planet. They have hundreds and thousands of people guarding them. I mean, do you realize how big the security network is that these people have? But you have to get through 8-10 levels of security to even get close to them. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. They'd have to drop bombs overhead off them. And then you'd be bombing a neighbor, and that's not going to happen.
It's fascinating. I mean, how deep and vast the whole, it's funny how this why are conspiracy theorists so popular? Because there is real conspiracies afoot. I mean, I don't believe in a lot of them, but that's why I think they're so plausible on so many different levels.
But Billy, this is not a conspiracy. This is a fact.
No, I know it is, but I mean it's a conspiracy, but it's not a fake conspiracy. It's a real conspiracy.
It's not like there are aliens or there's a bunker under the airport in Denver. Like, this is a straight up, this is what's going on. I mean, keep this in mind. I think since 2000, the U.S. had labeled 36 people as fugitives in Mexico. They were either second level or first level bosses of a drug cartel. There were 36 of them. As of now, 35 are either dead or in prison in this country, including El Chapo. Do you happen to know who the one person that's never been arrested? El Mayo. You don't think he's protected by someone? Come on.
Of course.
You can't go through that life and never be arrested. It just doesn't work like that.
There's an interesting book that looks at the CIA as an organized crime group. Have you seen this book?
I haven't, but through my history and my studies, if you look at a lot of major events in American history, whether it's JFK, the attempted assassinations on Fidel Castro, even RFK, Martin Luther King, a lot of that was CIA led, I believe, things. And a lot of it was Mafia involved as well. So now I haven't seen that, but I'd have to check it out.
The name of the book, The CIA as Organized Crime, How Illegal Operations Corrupt America and the World. It's written by a guy named Douglas Valentine. And it goes through the history of it. It's really funny. This guy, it's a very interesting book. And it's very interesting to me that this book it's kind of suppressed. Now,
of course it's
Douglas
suppressed.
Valentine. Right, of course, because that's and it's interesting in this book. You got to check this book out because it's as guys like us that are really into organized crime. This is the real tough crew. This is the toughest crew, right? The toughest family. And it talks about how this guy Douglas Valentine, he went to William Colby, the CIA director, and asked him for an interview. And so Colby thought, because his previous book was on World War II, his dad was in World War II, and his dad was involved in all this thing in a Japanese camp where they assassinated a snitch, like ally snitch in a Japanese internment camp. And so they went to his dad and said to him, you better keep it quiet or we're going to try you for murder. And this is where this guy, so William Colby thought, this guy's dad was in the military, so he must be a nice guy and I can give him access. So Colby gave him all this access. Little did he know this guy's like super subversive and anti-CIA. And he's, very, very thorough investigative journalist. So what happened was, because Colby referred him to all these other people in the CIA, they actually thought he was a spook. They thought he was a CIA agent. So they just told him all this stuff unknowing, because, in the book, one interesting thing he says in the book is, what a common cover is for a CIA agent? A journalist. A lot of them pretend to be journalists. And so, but this guy it's a fascinating book. Just check it out. But he goes into, it started, the whole CIA thing started with the Chinese nationalists, because right after World War II, they needed them to fight communism. So that's when they allowed them to start flooding the heroin. And that's the very genesis of it. And then, of course, the Corsican Mafia, as you know, with the American Mafia, that was flooding into Vietnam and then to the United States. And then, of course, we know Freeway Rick Ross in LA with his campaign that funded the Contras. This is CIA stuff, man. And that's the one crew you don't want to mess with.
Agreed. No, 100%.
We might have to edit this podcast. We may be in danger. That's, but it's fascinating stuff.
Part 5 coming soon. Links to parts 1, 2, and 3 in the description and on the video's end screen.
Billy Luna.
This is Victoria Luna. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and share with your mates on social media. Check out these awesome videos now. Ciao.